is awake and we will sleep no more. So today, protesters in Niger attacked France embassy.
It's really interesting to see the impact that this coup has had on the civilians in Niger. It's also really, really interesting to see the types of flags that they're holding up, which to me grant a certain amount of understanding in how clearly African citizens are seeing the geopolitical spectrum at the moment, far more clearly than I would say the West are. I struggle to explain to Westerners how all of this is interlinked, and thankfully myself and Mr. Warren Thornton have come up with some evidence in the last week that will clearly show how involved all of these different political situations are. The coups happening in Africa, the issues in Ukraine, and also what's happening in Sudan. Now, a couple of things have really, really taken me by surprise. One is the incredible knowledge that the African people in general seem to have of what's going on, because that is just not something that we see in the West. People just have no clue. And two is how involved specific countries, people are in what we are led to believe is some grand democratic stand, when actually, if you look below the surface, you see things like this. This is a newspaper article from the 6th of July, and it talks about a uranium mine which was visited by China whilst the delegate was in Niger, and how China and Niger have talked of deals that include a uranium mine as well as an industrial park and an oil pipeline. Now, since this event, there has been a massive uptick in the violence that has befallen Niger and its citizens. The people I've spoken to that live in the country have told me that there have been an immense amount of pressure put on the civilians, mines on roads, sabotage of people removing uranium from this mine and lithium from other mines. And then you look at the reality that most of France is run on nuclear power, and that nuclear power is run on the uranium that they get from Niger. So you realise that there are people that have a vested interest in this deal not going through, and that those are exactly the same people who are pulling the strings in other places. Now, what's also surprised me is that I found out today that the African Union, and more succinctly Mr. Ruto, who I've heard mixed reviews about. Many people think that he was not democratically elected. He can be known to be very pro-West, and he can also be seen as a bit of an agent zigzag. And it seems that he has come out and said that unless the Niger people reinstate their president, their sitting president, in a week, that there will be sanctions put on Niger, that property will be and bank accounts will be seized belonging to the families of people involved in the coup. So not even just the people themselves, but their children, their wives, their parents, As far as I'm aware, the people of Niger are standing quite firm. And there is talk of there possibly being a no-fly zone introduced. But Niger has also said that they will consider Western-supported countries of Africa that go along with these Western-backed sanctions, which of course also come in the light of France's remarkable comment suggesting that it would turn down aid to Niger, ignoring, of course, the fact that France controls Niger's currency. So it's not aid given to Niger by France, it's actually France allowing Niger to have some of its own currency, some benefits of its own trade, etc., etc. But certainly the now military-ruled Niger is saying that countries in Africa who go along with this will be considered hostile. This could be the start of a much, much bigger problem in Africa. And that worries me a great deal, because I think that of all the people in the world, the Africans really deserve some peace. But we have to look at who is pulling the strings here. As I've said, myself and the lovely Mr. Warren Thornton have uncovered some information that makes some of that very clear. And just to clarify, we will both be releasing that information on our Patreons to our Patreon followers only on Wednesday evening, and then Thursday we will make that public, and then on Friday we aim to do a YouTube live where we answer questions about the information that we've been given. But it is damning. It's damning in a number of ways, and it connects all of these dots. The war in Ukraine, the issues in Sudan, the issues in Niger. And it shows a level of control over certain countries, their currencies, their politics, which is really, really interesting. Now, I just want to remind people that the BBC had this to say about the Russia-African summit. Unlike the previous Russia-African summit in 2019, attended by 43 African leaders, this time only 17 are expected in St. Petersburg, ignoring, of course, that, in fact, 49 countries are involved in this summit, but only 17 leaders have gone and made the journey to St. Petersburg. Hardly surprising in light of the issues facing Africa at the moment, including in Niger and including in Sudan, which are almost certainly connected to this increase in cooperation with Russia. And we hear stories like this, where African leaders are talking about the obstacles that were faced in reaching St. Petersburg for the summit. They've had to re-rent planes because of insurance issues. They've had problems flying over different countries. There has been there's been an all-out mission to prevent people from going to St. Petersburg, including, of course, weirdly statements from the IMF and its think tanks saying things like countries who are shown to be supportive of Russia will not be able to apply for aid through the World Bank or through the IMF monetary fund. So you can understand why perhaps some of the African Union have chosen to make these statements to Niger, concerned perhaps about maybe their own ability to get these loans that they've relied on, maybe being asked to call in loans that they already owe, maybe facing massive hikes in interest that are going to affect their economies, maybe seeing the sort of attack on currency that Mr. Erdogan saw before his election in May. So on that level, I can understand why there is perhaps some issues within Africa in supporting Niger with its coup. However, I think it's highly unlikely that Niger will simply turn around and reinstate the president after its own people have been subjected to an increase in terrorism, security threats, and exploitation in the last few weeks. Big things are happening in Africa, and I think it's really important that we listen to Africans speak about that. Please follow Timo. He's an incredible man, and he talks very passionately and very succinctly about the African Union, about West Africa, and about the issues being faced there. It's very, very hard to get such information from anyone that's not on the ground. And it is now Africa's time to rise and our time to watch. It really is up to the politicians of the West whether we are going to watch that with grace or whether we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot and try and stand against it.